Hey, everybody, welcome back. How are you today? I am delighted and excited to welcome you back to I'm Possible Live and really grateful for today's amazing guest who's joining us, the very talented Sara Phillips. Had the pleasure of meeting Sara in uh, in Val Lowe's map
Yep.
workshop and was delighted because Lachelle, America's supermom, introduced us to Val, and Val said she was having a workshop, and I was like, I need a visual version of like a map or like mapping your journey. I was planning a bunch of launches, and boy, it was a little bit complicated, but it's my reminder on vacation to go back to finish coloring now. But I'd love to just invite you, Sara, to let us know a little bit about you and let everybody else know who you are. And while Sara's introducing herself, let us know where you're from. Let us know ways we can help you and what introductions you're looking for right now, or if there's something coming up in your zones of genius that you'd love others to know about. And thanks again, Sara.
Absolutely my pleasure. When Melanie and I met, she's such a joy. So thank you, Melanie. You always bring light to my life. I love your smile. I love your energy. I love the joy that you bring to life. So it is an absolute honor for me to be here with you, and I'm very touched that you would invite me to share with you today. So thank you for that. As far as me, I am a sales coach, but I am not a traditional sales coach. I am not the one who's going to teach people what script to write, how to handle objections, all of those types of things. What I teach people to do, let me give you a little bit of background. It'll kind of help you understand a little bit of where I come from. When I was a little girl, Pop Rocks just came out, and they got some really, really bad press. And so nobody's parents wanted them to have Pop Rocks. So all the kids at school were talking about the fact they wanted these Pop Rocks. They couldn't get them. Well, my parents owned a grocery store. I was like, I can get you Pop Rocks. So they all gave me money. I went home and I made a deal with my parents so that I could buy it wholesale, and I would take the candy to school and I would sell it retail. And I actually paid my way through college doing that. But the joy of it for me was because I never had sales as a job. I didn't take a sales course. Nobody taught me how. It was just a natural byproduct of what was going on in my environment. And because of that, I realized that buying is nothing other than connecting people with what they want. So I totally don't get the whole aversion to sales because I approach it totally differently. And so that is what I teach when I'm coaching somebody in sales. It is about helping them to understand how to not sell. It is teaching them how to become their client's assistant buyer. You know, we all avoid sales because we feel uncomfortable. It feels pushy and manipulative and icky and all of those things. But it doesn't have to be that way. What if your only objective was to find out, hey, what is it that you want in life? Where are you now? Let me help you figure out the next step and connect you with a resource to get that. Sounds a whole lot easier, doesn't it? That's because it is. When I walk in to a place to talk to somebody, whatever, my only goal is that when I leave, the person that I'm talking to has a resource to take the next step in their life. That's it. That's all I care about. Sometimes that's me. Sometimes it's not me. But even when it's not me, I don't have to feel bad when I leave because everything I do creates win-win. So that's kind of where I'm at with the sales process. People will say to me, well, can you teach me how to handle objections? No, because if you're doing selling the proper way, they're the ones who are talking. They're not going to object to themselves.
That is so cool. I love what you mentioned because, today's questions that we had for our guests was which resources and strategies help you create successful relationships.
Yeah.
But what resources do you love to use? in the process of providing them for your clients?
I have a huge network of people. I do a lot of networking, and I purposely go through and get to know them one on one so that I know their personality styles, all of those types of things. So that if somebody says to me, for example, I had a girl a couple of weeks ago who wanted to hire me as a coach. But when we dug underneath everything, what I found out was she didn't have her packages together yet. And I'm like, honey, as much as I would love to help you, now's not the right time. You don't need to be spending money with me. You need to get these packages together. So here's the name of 3 people that I know that can help you. Here's a book and here's a podcast. And I was like, when you get all this taken care of, come back to me. If it's time, I'm going to tell you that it's time to go on to sales. If it's not, I'm going to hook you up with some more resources. So to me, networking is not about finding a new client. It is about finding resources for the people that I connect with and sharing them so that I have somebody to refer people to.
I love that. Boy, did I wish I had met you back in the day of floating around, started as an entrepreneur in 20 years ago in a part-time one. And it was so challenging to figure out where to kind of take a step
Yeah.
or take a beat. Back in that day in the Stone Ages, there were less online resources that we
Mhm.
could access. I started working, I was my boss's first employee, and he was not a fan of the internet. And I found the only online resources I could find were the ones that ended up coming with subscriptions that he had. And I think one of the challenges about resources, and I love it that you mentioned about personality styles, because we've been spending a lot of time talking about styles. And styles are, with all transparency, they're the first module in my beta course, Creating Connections to Scale. They're the
Okay.
first, what I call, critical element in helping you create as you're creating connections to scale. So I love that we started with the style part. The personalities part, in the beginning, I thought it was horseradish. Was recovering from a migraine one day, and someone shared on Facebook 2 heads, and I'm always following anything with 2 heads that looks like it's a natural holistic migraine cure. And that was how I found Sally Hogshead and fascination advantages. And Sally talked about our style from the perspective of how the world saw us. And I was really caught in that part of it. So her fascination advantages and the tremendous coaches who were certified in it, they gave me a way to kind of penetrate the introvert's turtle shell, so to speak. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure in the beginning, had some trust issues, wasn't sure I should trust it. So I love what you're saying about starting from the personality part, because I think Stephen Farber has this amazing system that I'm looking forward to talking with him more about tomorrow. And Stephen's got one that basically takes our disc style and shows who we are as a bird. And I think just any way, you starting with style as a way to like help your clients or help them just start the conversations about, here's where you're stuck, here's where you need, here's some pebbles, here's some, maybe big rocks or boulders that we need to move out of the way. When you mentioned style, I was stuck
Mhm.
in analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Sally's system helped me take some steps out of it, but I stayed stuck there. And then I ended up replacing that with perfection paralysis. Why?
Yes.
Because every block you have needs another one, another big boulder to come fall into its place. And that's the part that I love as you're talking about locating the resources. But if you don't have the strategy, we need kind of the two added together
Yeah.
to create an action or a goal that helps us move out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to all of it, and everybody knows about the five love languages. What people aren't familiar with is that there are four sales languages, and most people aren't aware. And if you don't understand personality styles, you don't know where you're starting from. I could say one thing to you that would light you up, and you would buy just like that. And I could say the exact same word with the exact same intonation to someone like me, and it would totally shut me down. Not interested. So, we always hear that sales is a numbers game. And that's true only to the extent that unless we understand personality styles, we're only good at selling to people like us.
Hmm. So that's basically that person who always says, hang out with the you, talk to the you with fear, talk to the you in your past because you understand the
Yeah.
struggles, you understand the hurdles that
Yeah.
that person needs to jump over and keep talking to them.
But
I,
now imagine taking that to the next level and knowing how to speak the language of every single human being that you meet because you understand their personality style and their sales style.
Ooh, this sounds sexy, 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 Sarah. You're
Super
definitely going to have
powerful.
to drop the link because I
Yeah.
think it'll be something that would really be helpful. And besides the language part, because I think part of it is we have different language filters,
Yes.
different
Absolutely.
generations. I just was on a call with a talented coach that I've been following for a bit, really appreciative of them. And I needed some inspiration. And if you're speaking the language, the person then understands your issues, they understand what your goals are, and I think it's really helpful. I think one of the things that I love about it is when you have that understanding, my focal point was in helping others learn to earn, and that there are a bunch of learning styles. So, I was talking about it in an earlier live that I'm a social or solitary learner. So I either
Mhm.
learn in groups or I learn by myself. That's the introvert, tried and true. You take the materials, you take your workbooks, you take your VIP sessions, you take all the bonuses, all the great content, and then you try and bring it down to, hey, what are some tools that I just learned that I can add to my toolkit that'll really
Exactly.
help me or help others?
Exactly.
Um,
I'm going to share this link with you. It's a free link. Everybody can go on there and get their own personality code so that because where you begin is understanding yourself. What is it that motivates me? What, and we think we know until when I first did this, I was like, oh, I had never really thought about that. But yeah, they're absolutely right. So yeah, feel free to jump on there and get your personality
oh, that's very
profile card.
cool. I did take the bank code.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's very, very
fascinating.
cool. Oh, Marcia McRae shared that with me a bit ago, and now I'm gonna have to go and peek and see if I can figure out which bank code. And also, do you think our results change over the time? Like if I took this like 4 years ago, I should try it
Yes,
again. Okay,
yes,
I'll I'll,
absolutely.
I'll I'll start. I'll start fresh.
Absolutely.
Um,
I was years ago, when you talk about the DISC system, the guy who wrote Positive Personality Profiles, Dr. Rome, he came in and did a private seminar for us. There was about 25 of us there. And um, so he personally did my assessment the first time. I just did another one not too long ago, and it was amazing how much I had changed over time because, to start with, my D was like through the roof and I had zero analytical, none of the C whatsoever. And now everything's kind of leveling out where I'm within a few points of everything. So I have really brought everything kind of to the center, which is where I really wanted to be, because that way I get to cultivate the best of all the personality styles. So
See, that's fantastic. What an awesome strategy for us to kind of emulate that knack or the act of, trying to create balance, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah,
Uh, so that, you're able to help more people solve problems.
exactly, exactly. The the style I had in the beginning was, it was kind of it's my way or the highway kind of way. Well, you can imagine, um, not everybody was really receptive to that. You had to be tough to hang with me when I first started my sales training career. And now I'm much more mellow. I meet people exactly where they're at so that I can help them to overcome their own personal obstacles. And I love it. It's funny because when I was young, I remember hearing the phrase that do what you love and you never work a day in your life. And I did not realize just how true that was until I started my sales coaching business. Because when I finish coaching somebody in sales, I am more energized and more excited than I am at any other time. So to have the personality styles to go along with that and just enhance that for everybody is just such a joy for me.
Have to truly thank you for that because, the day that we first had a chance to have, virtual cappuccino, I didn't have Wi-Fi that day. It's like today, another delightful tech challenge day. And thank you again, Catherine, for being in the green room in case we get zapped out again. The in minutes you put me at ease. And what I loved was you got me out of my head, got me out of the introvert head. So maybe we're sitting at home or at our desk, and you maybe are in a place with beautiful positive thoughts that inspire you, or maybe you have some sort of reminders around you of call to actions. I ended up sitting in a parking lot outside of the post office speaking with Sara, and boy, that next meeting with my coach, she said, wow, who in the world helped you get unstuck so quickly? And it's a knack and a talent. So really, I'd encourage you, if you haven't had a chance, definitely reach out and check out Sarah's link. Ali, I am honored and thank you for sharing this.
I yeah, I've you read your personality because of your formal training and active listening as a coach. Wow, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I
That
think the challenge there is that in HR, where we're sitting in front of somebody, and I appreciate talented professionals like Anne Marie at Mid Hudson Valley Sherm and Heather Skillman of the Skillman Enterprise, who really helped me with some, HR tips. But I sat with someone who was in financial services who was trying to sign me up as a client. And Ali, I think he did the same thing that your interviewer did. He said he thought that he had determined what my personality style was. And so he gave me a pitch, and none of them were working. And at one point, he took his pen and we were in a restaurant. He took his pen and he kind of threw it down and he says, how do people read you? And you know what? I finally relaxed when he asked that question because I said, you will not be able to read me until I trust you and until I'm comfortable with you. And you're saying some things that aren't maximizing my comfort. And it was really hard, woman in business, to kind of say this, but I really was listening to everything he said, and some of it wasn't going in the right container. It was a bad version of a waterfall, or for lack of a better phrase, of a tsunami. And we really have to be careful with that when we're having conversations with people. But I love what Ali's saying, because active listening training, we're trying to stay fully present. We're trying to respond to people's styles. But at the same time, people are trying to put us in pegs or slots. I found myself a couple of weeks ago hearing myself say that I'm a little bit of a disruptor, that I feel like an alchemist. I have an alchemist brand. I like listening to what my clients are trying to do and bringing to the table, and maybe we'll mix it up. Maybe it has the same ingredients, maybe it's a slightly different recipe, maybe it involves different team members that are sitting around the leadership table, inviting them into the process. Maybe it means inviting others in to kind of have a seat who you weren't planning on creating a seat at the table. But I don't think Ali failed at the interview. I think the
Mhm.
person we're speaking with sometimes it's their inability to show up as an active or a deep listener, as opposed to, I remember years ago in the garment industry, we put ourselves out of business. I was an import coordinator, and we really put ourselves out of business because of the way that the companies were set up with so many people with overlapping skills. And a lot of times I'd have a boss who basically they taught you how to do your job. And when the money got tight, your boss could do your job. It wasn't a welcome fit, but your boss is the one who taught you the hows and knew how things should work. And I remember going to an interview, and I was newly engaged, and I didn't realize I was in the garment industry, wear black uniform. We always look like we're at a
Mhm.
wake or a funeral. Even in 95-degree heat, you just it was a New York City thing in the garment industry. Everybody was in black. And I went to this interview and I never thought about taking off my ring. And someone had sent me for the interview. And I didn't make it to the second interview. And the person who recommended me called the next week and he said, "How did it go?" I said, "It didn't." He says, "What happened?" I said, "The person interviewing me was looking at me, and I believe she was looking at my jewelry." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, like it made you feel like you're at a designer brand and their taste level or their style level is one of simplicity and elegance. When he went back to the person he referred me to, the person said that she didn't invite me for a second interview because she assumed that I was about to get married and then going to get pregnant and going to need time off for maternity leave.
Yep.
And that wouldn't be consistent with the expanding role that they had for this job. And I remember thinking later, wow,
Yep.
kind of spooky, that a
Yeah.
piece of jewelry, you determined who I was, not what I could bring to the table. So I really love what Ali said because it's those little teeny things.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing is when people start learning about personality styles, they look at it as a science. And although it is a science, there's a lot of art to it. And it's not something that you spend your life going, okay, they did this, so they're this. You just got to kind of feel your way into it. You can't stick somebody into a box, and you have to, like you said, it's the active listening thing. It is the um when you say something to somebody and they react in a negative way, you've got to take that into the fold and say, well, okay, yes, they may be this personality type. However, they've got some other things going on. So it's still a matter of not treating people like a book, and this is how you're classified and this is what you do. It's about treating human beings like human beings. And that's my whole sales process is built around the fact that I work with human beings. I'm selling to human beings. And I want them to feel like that they are being talked to and respected as a human, not as a number or a box to check or any, and that's, I think that's the thing that I see missing most often in sales processes
I
is
love
that.
what you said because I think it's really missing in our world. It's one of the things that I love, about mental fitness, the real reminder of we need things that we're doing that remind us that we're humans. And and I'm really appreciative because the mental fitness community, of which I'm a relatively new member, has been nothing but welcoming, and really looking forward to getting certified next year in the system. But Ali is reminds me one of the things that mental fitness, which is, it's there's an assessment that'll help measure 9 of our saboteurs. The 10th saboteur is not in the assessment. That 10th saboteur is the judge. I'm grateful to have learned this because Phil Gilks put a positive intelligence, wonderful, wonderful graphic up at a time when I ended up that day needing a tool to have a conversation with my dad, who has vascular dementia, who didn't feel like listening. So, positive intelligence, the saboteur's part, helped me start the conversation with dad. But Ali is reminding us that who knows what is good and what is bad. So in positive intelligence, we have a sage perspective, which is trying to, take the saboteurs and kind of use some amazing PQ reps. Like this is a tactile one, and there are other ones that you can use that'll help switch you into sage, so you feel like you have sage superpowers.
Yes.
To kind of stop some of the mental chatter, or as I was talking before about analysis or perfection paralysis, to really bring that back. But Allie's saying, who knows what is good and what is bad?
There is
Because
no, my personal feelings are that there is no such thing as good or bad. Events are neutral. It's only the interpretation that we put on them. And if you think about even such a huge event like 9/11, to us it was a horrific event. But there are people around the world who thought it was like the best day ever. The event didn't change. It is what we bring to the table. So kudos to you, Ali, that you understand that it's not about that was a bad thing or you did something wrong. It was all about um, you experiencing it for what it was and saying, okay, this wasn't meant to be. Why? There's a better opportunity out there. There's a better way to move towards the future because you didn't attach good or bad to the event.
you're really hitting some personal. Married to a retired first responder who was actively working that day,
Yeah.
and I happened to work in Manhattan. And before that day, one of my biggest fears was of fire. So the calls that started that day from my active first responder, who, was in the gym and discovered and said, "Hey, honey, today's the day I told you about years ago that you needed to come wherever I told you." And I learned that day about things that will forever shape us and change us. I learned a bunch of different languages that day from the people of many cultures I was surrounded by. I learned about how resourceful we can be
Yeah.
in the face of some really stuff that shakes us to our core or past our core or to our bones. Or I worked for an employer and was his first employee, and he reminded me of the HR interviewer that Ali mentioned. And it was hard for him to actually express anything emotionally, in a really sad way. Multiple marriages. We're all looking for people to kind of get us. But that day, I learned from him a language that I'm grateful stopped when I left work at 10:30. on my second day back to the office after vacation. But I learned that day in conversations with people, whether it was the wonderful ladies who I just happened to see as a commuter who said, "Hey, run to Grand Central. We work for Metro North. They're going to have trains open for a little bit." And I met all the people who brought blessings that day. But at the same time, the emotions or what happened, I think, to kind of change how we communicate, how we experience stuff. When you're saying be intentional, that was such a day of a variety of intentions. And I had a coworker who had 3 children. She needed to get across a bridge and
Yeah.
walk with another coworker so she could go pick up her 3 children from school. So I think I'm loving what you're saying and loving the reminder of our styles or our conversations or how we interpret an experience, how we respond, whether it's trauma, whether it's a success. There's a bunch of different ways, and you're really so right because it's our styles that really determine that. And wow, we're going to definitely continue this, Sarah, when we talk about styles, because I've wanted to talk about styles in a while. And Sarah's like, "Hey, I have something for you. Hey, I appreciate this as I'm recording the last of, the videos and the audios for the course. I really appreciate your timing. So
Absolutely.
we've talked about strategies. So would your strategy tip, what would be some takeaways you'd love our listeners to take away from the strategies part of Be Intentional? Where should they start?
The strategy for me is it goes right back to where my sales career began, and that is not treating people like a number or a means to an end. No one wants to feel that way. It is about you go in with the intention to say, where do you want to go and how can I help you get there? If that's all anyone ever learned was just going in there with the mindset that I just want to make sure you know how to take the next step in your journey, everything else just falls into place. But it's learning how to keep that mindset in the forefront of your mind because we get in the moment and it's really easy to fall back into the salesy conversation. And, I've actually got, and I highly recommend it. There's a program out called Fathom now that you can do Zoom calls with, that it literally sends me a bar and tells me how much of the conversation I have been talking versus the other person, so that I make sure that my talking time is limited and they get to do all the talking. Because that's where we find out what people need. And our job is really just to help them get what they need.
I love that because Ali was saying about the active listening. That sounds fantastic. Definitely, please share that with us so we can share it with others. I was in a challenge last week that I didn't accurately assess or state up front the amount of time that was needed on the front end of the challenge. So before you signed up, it looked like it was going to be an hour a day. And that first day's session with some really dynamic speakers was 2 hours and 40 minutes on day one.
Ooh.
It's a 5 day training. What I liked was they had a homework prompt that you could complete online. So I showed up every day to do my homework, which was the cool part, whether I had had the chance to have the 2 hours and 40 minutes plus. They did this for 5 days. Today, there's a 6 day of content. Now, if you signed up for the VIP bonus and you were able to go back and listen to the recordings, maybe it's, 17 hours of on demand content to kind of consume at your leisure.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they showed up today for an extra hour, but they said they'd show up for an hour. I bet you it's another 2.5 hours of training.
It would not surprise me.
So the showing up to help somebody solve problems, and in this case, the talking heads part of it, the talking at you part of it, it's kind of, the continuing to put fluid or beverages in a cup that's already full or in a pitcher or in an ecosystem that really can't handle it. So I love what you're saying about from the be intentional about slowing it down to make sure whether it's an 80/20 or less rule. I really love that. I remember something Ali said though. I used to be on coaching calls with clients and they're like, "Are you still there?" And it's the reminder almost that as an active or a deep listener, we're taking notes. The pen is always moving. So me with my piece of paper before because I appreciate just having had 4 points I wanted to make sure gave Sarah a chance to kind of share her gems on. And Sarah hit them all four without me sharing any of them with her. So I love your being intentional. At the same time, we still have amazing Ali here. And truly, I absolutely love what he's just putting up. We have to get the two of you together for a discussion. So where do you want to go? The navigate power and how I can help you. Empathy and co-creation. Absolute amazing. Mic
Yep.
drop. And Ollie is still with us. Ollie, you're gonna have to come and we're gonna have to hang out and talk. Ooh, be intentional. When you are with your client, you are empathy of yourself. When your ego is not getting in your way, you're completely with the other. This creates such a powerful energy channel transmission that will activate the sage heart mind of the client. And bam, their mind starts working like never before. Oh, you'll laugh. Our earlier live on my Facebook page, I really enjoyed an episode or sharing about what happens when life happens, and that will happen in one of our premieres. I loved it, having a chance to record with family, extended family members listening to General Hospital. And Stuart the dog decided that it was his day for a LinkedIn Live debut. And then you see assorted family members with plates and food and lunches and back to work. And it really reminds me just the showing up all full out, just being really full present. And I love that you shared a great way for us to get in touch with your bank code and that Catherine put that in the chat for us. But as we're leaving each other, if there's one thing, Sarah, that the person who's terrified and hasn't made their first sale yet, that person, like the person that you were talking about, sending to someone who will now help them start the process of trying to make an offer. How would you say if that person hasn't had a chance yet to take your bank code, if they're just, trying in the hustle or trying to increase the revenue, where would you suggest they start with a resource?
First resource that I would start with would be a book by Les Gibling called Skill with People. It is a fabulous, fabulous book. It really teaches you the basics of just learning to connect because sales is nothing other than connecting with other human beings.
Hmm.
That truly is the whole course of it. It's a very skinny book. I think it's like 50 pages long. Absolutely amazing. He's got another one called How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People that is also just a fabulous book in learning how to communicate. And there's one other thing that I wanted to read. There's something that you said that I wanted to leave your readers with, which was one of the most profound pieces of information that I've received in a long time. It came from one of my coaches. Um, because by nature, I am a nurturer. I want to give and 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 never take anything for myself. And I find that a lot of people in life are like that. And she said something to me that I will carry with me always. And that is, Sarah, you never, ever fill someone else from your cup. You only fill them from the saucer. You only fill them from the overflow. Because if you let your cup diminish, whatever you're sharing has lost a lot of its value. That just moved me in a way that I can't even begin to express. And so selling is a very, very giving business when you do it right. But always remember that you have to fill your cup first and feed them from your overflow.
I love that. You're so reminding me of Sally Hogshead because Sally's coaching was around trying to show up from the wellspring of using the seven advantages of her system, of realizing that one of them was your dormant advantage. That was the one that could feel like your quicksand or your mudslide, or, where you needed help, whether it was from a colleague or from a coach, you needed some sort of support, whether it's an outside training or something else that could help you build a skill. But I absolutely love that as a place to leave our amazing guests today, and to truly thank Sara, the sales coach, for sharing her gems. And this one is for you. Smiles across the miles, with thanks for warming us up today with some really amazing gems during Impossible Live, as well as some fabulous books to check out and some systems and an assessment. What I love is Sara sharing it with the why it's important to us and how it can help us build resources and strategies.
If anybody wants to just have a conversation with me, I always do free 30-minute complimentary consultations. I think that Catherine is going to put a link in there to my Calendly. Have them feel free to, everybody feel free to just jump on my calendar. I would be more than happy to give you some personal tips.
That sounds fantastic. And Catherine has popped in that link. And Ollie, thank you so much for joining us. And I know we're really late in your day. So thank you all for joining us for and bringing your amazing gems. And I hope you all have a magnificent day. Stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, and please stay in touch and take great care. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.